Hello everyone, welcome back again hopefully. Today, in this video I'm going to be showing how to do if statements in the selection structure. So this is what we're going to be covering in this segment of the C++ tutorials. So again, we're going to be using Visual Studio, and I covered how to get that in my first video, so if you just found this one, you may want to go back and watch the first video, and it'll show you how to get everything set up, okay? So, like we did in the last video, you're going to have all this set up. And to start things off with what an if statement is, we're going to go ahead and do a int a equals 10. And then we're going to do, how to use an if is you say if, parenthesis, a, and then what's called a relational operator, which is greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. There's also not equal to, which you say by shift 1 equal, like that, or you can say equal, which is equivalent, okay? So, because you use a equals 10 to declare something, but you use a double equal sign to show that it is equivalent. But in this case, we're going to do if a is greater than 0, okay? And then directly underneath that, we're going to want to do a cout. A is positive, end quote, and then endo. And then do another if, and we're just going to do one for, like, if it's positive, negative, or if it is 0. A is equal to 0. Actually, let me make this bigger, just because I noticed in my last video the font was slightly, there we go, that'll be better. And then the last one we're going to do is if a is less than 0, cout a is negative. Okay, so what this is going to do, it's going to say, okay, we have an integer a, and that's 10. Is a greater than 0? Yes, so cout a is positive. Then it's going to test, is 10 equal to 0? No, so it won't print this out. And then it's going to say, is 10 less than 0? No, so it will not print that out either, okay? So we're going to go ahead and run this just so you can kind of see what it does. Okay, so it tells us that a is positive, which is correct. So the first thing I'm going to mention is this method of if statements, it's kind of inefficient just because it's checking each following condition, even though the first one is true. Because really, if a is positive, a can't be negative or 0, okay? So to fix that, you'd say else if. So if a isn't positive, and if it's 0, then it's not going to check this, okay? And really, for the last statement in an if section, you can say just else, okay? Because if it's not positive and it's not 0, the only other option for this number is for it to be negative, okay? So that's one way to be more efficient when you're coding, okay? So now let's go ahead, we'll just run this again. You're not going to see a difference, but there is a difference there in how much the computer has to do, because it can stop immediately following this cout statement, okay? So that's a basic if statement. Now, with how we used if a is greater than 0, we can also use something called logical operators, which I'll comment them off over here. It's double ampersands or double bars, and the double bars, they're found if you hit shift and then on the backslash key, you'll get those, okay? And it's 2 of them. Now, this double ampersand stands for and this one stands for or, okay? So let's say that you also have an integer z, and that's equal to negative 10. What it will do is we can say if a is greater than 0, double ampersand z is greater than 0, then we'll just say a and z, proper English, are positive. And then we'll say if a is equal to 0, double ampersand z equal to 0, a and z are 0. And then the final one would be else Actually, we're going to add another else if, because there's multiple conditions, or there's more than just the 3 conditions we had. So we're going to say else if A is greater than 0, or Z is greater than 0. One of the numbers is positive. Okay. And we'll add else if A is less than 0 or Z is less than 0. See out one of the numbers is negative. And I think you guys are going to get the gist of how this is going to go. So we're going to go ahead and stop there, because we just want to show how relational operators work. So for this statement, A is positive and Z is negative, so it should display one of the numbers is positive, okay? Because it's not going to get to this command, or to this line in code, because this is going to check out as true. So we'll go ahead and Control F it. Okay, so one of the numbers is positive. So that's a basic if statement, and again, these are called logical operators, and these are relational. Okay? So we're going to move on now from the if statement, and we're going to do something called the switch, okay? So let's go ahead and we'll backspace all of this, okay? Just because we don't need to have it in our way. Since I'm using a bigger, since I'm kind of zoomed in, I can't show as much on the screen either. So this is going to be what's called a switch. And to do a switch, you need a choice. It's mainly used in menus, okay? So let's say int choice, and we're just going to declare that. We're not going to give it a value yet. And now we're going to see out. Let's say you own a pet grooming facility. So we'll say 1 small dog and L, see out, and we're going to do a 2 a large dog, and then we'll say 3 we'll do a squid. A squid seems like a very groom friendly animal. So we're going to have that squid in there, okay? Now we're going to want to say, see out, please enter the menu number that corresponds to your animal. CN choice. Okay, so basically what this is going to do, we have an integer named choice, and it's going to print out all this. And they're going to pick between 1, 2, or 3. And then how a switch works is it's called switch, parenthesis, and then within that parenthesis you put the variable that you're going to be doing the actions with. So in this case it's the choice variable. Now you have to do another squiggly bracket underneath this because it's going to include more than one line, okay? And if statements are the same way. Like in the example I used, we only we didn't use these because it was only one line immediately following the if. But if it's more than one, you have to have these. In the case of this switch, we're going to use more than one. Okay? So we're going to say case 1, because that's one of the options for this variable to be, is a 1. So we're going to say case 1, enter, see out, cost. We're just going to print the cost. And for this dog, it will be $50. And we're going to use something called a break statement. And I'll explain the break statement by removing it in a few minutes. It's easier to see it when you remove it, what it does, than try to explain it now. Since the large dog probably will not be barking as much as a small dog, we're going to go ahead and say $25, just because there's no annoyance fee. And we have to do a break. And then the final one is going to be a case 3. And we're going to say see out, cost. I mean, a squid, I think you can just put in a bucket of water. So we'll say $1.50 for a squid. And then you need a break. And finally, the last step in this is you want a default. A default would be, let's say, someone tried to be funny and they enter like 5, 6, negative 2000, any number that's not a valid option, you want this to just say invalid option, some form of an error message, okay? And then you finally want a last break. Okay, so this is the basic structure of a switch. You have switch, variable name, cases, possible values, and then the instructions within each value. And then, of course, the default statement. So let's go ahead and run this. So, again, it asks me, please enter the menu number that corresponds to your animal. Let's say I have a large dog. We're going to say $25, okay? So that, you'll see what that did is, it knew it wasn't a 1. As soon as it found out it was a 2, it printed 25. Now, I'm going to explain the break statement now, and I'm going to remove this break statement, and I'm also going to remove this break statement, okay? And then I'm going to do Control F5. So, it asked me, please enter the menu number that corresponds to your animal. Let's say I have a small dog. It's going to tell me cost is $50, $25, and $1.50. Because what a break does is it pulls you out of the switch statement. But if you don't have a break, it's just going to continue reading each thing that follows this cout, okay? So it's acting like if you have a small dog, that's also a large dog and a squid, which it's not, okay? So that's why break statements are important. There are sometimes when you may not want to use a break statement, like if one condition is true, then so is another. But in this case, each of these are individual options, and you do need the break statement, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just put those back in, break. And finally, I'm just going to do this one more time and enter a ridiculous number, so that way we can see that it prints out the default option, okay? So I'll go ahead and do that now. So let's say someone enters 2000. See, it'll inform them that that is an invalid option. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and press any key to continue. So that's the gist of a switch and the decision structure, but one of the special things that you can do with this is, let's say you want choice to be we're going to change this from an int to a character, and we're going to actually change all of these values to A, B, and C. We're just going to keep the program, just revise it, and we're going to say menu, we're going to want letter that corresponds to the animal. And then what you're going to have to do here, instead of saying 1, just say single quote A, single quote B, and then finally single quote C. Okay? And let's go ahead and hit Control F5. So, please enter the menu letter that corresponds to your animal, and we're just going to say A. So, see, it still knows that that letter, since it's a character variable, it will read off, it'll check cases for characters, okay? So it's basically the same thing, but if you prefer letters as opposed to numbers, then you could do that. And I mean, I'm sure that sometimes it makes more sense to use a letter on a menu as opposed to a number. Now, the one thing about using letters, though, is they can be upper or lowercase, which could lead to some user error, especially if they don't read this and type it exactly as it was wrote. So let's say they do an uppercase A. It's going to tell them an invalid option. Okay, so there's two ways to fix this. The first of which is we're going to say choice is equal to, and this is a new command, to lower. If I can spell that correctly. I still can't spell it correctly. To lower, choice. Okay, and what this to lower command does is it converts whatever is in the choice variable to lowercase. And if choice is already lowercase, it's not going to hurt. It'll just make sure it's lowercase. So let's run it now, and we'll use another uppercase letter, and we'll show you what happens here. So let's say I'm going to use an uppercase B. It's still going to realize that B, and then it's going to convert it to lowercase and take it in as a lower b and tell me it's $25, okay? And you could also, there's also another portion of this command. It's called toupper, which I would have to change all of these, and I will, just so that way you can see. I'm just going to change all these to this, and then I'll change all of these to A, B, and C as well. Okay. But this time I'm going to enter a lowercase so you can see that it successfully converts it to an uppercase. So please enter the menu letter that corresponds to your animal. Let's say I have a squid, a lowercase c. It tells me $1.50 even though it's checking if it's an uppercase. And that's because I used the choice to upper. Okay? And that's everything for this video. So, and the next video we're going to be talking about loops. So I'd make sure to get in on that one because the loop is going to be necessary for once we get into arrays. And that really gets you a lot of the power of programming. Once you have a loops and decisions, that's when you really get a lot of power behind it. Because let's say this user entered D, that'd be a default, but you could have this keep repeating until they enter a valid option, and then it would give them a valid price. So that's just one thing to think about. So please check out my next video, and just be sure to keep up on them. Alright, thanks.